All right. West Marches. The last video I did on Critical Role and how it's going to be a West Marches campaign, it's sparked some questions on how I did the West Marches game. So here we go. The first thing I did was I knew that the setting would have to be a little limited in scope. Very much it appeals more to a frontier type setting. So there's the exploration, and I knew I wanted to have a small base of operations that could grow as the adventurers went forward and they brought back wealth and treasure and whatnot, and they met new people. They would, have this trade and flow going on and would help create a bigger base because if you start with a smaller setting, you're also controlling for me, it was using the some old school rules of controlling the gold piece value of what could be had at the trading post. So they weren't able to get everything all at once. There was a value cap limit on what they could buy, and that helped keep everything down. And again, this was Savage Worlds. It'll work with any system. And this is how I did it. So I knew I had to have the. It was essentially like not really, a little bit bigger than a trading post. It was just up the river from a major coastal area, and I had set it to where there was no ships coming and going. It was pretty much the people here were they were immigrants, and they were going to make a new life in a very inhospitable area. Um, it was like they were running from a major war, massive destruction and whatnot. So that was one of the key components. I also knew that I had to have, I don't know, I think it was about a dozen key points already in place, just like things that they would want to go and do. Advanced scouts would have made note of. So you'd have these little landmarks in place. Um, and then for making the characters, I also wanted to do it where the settlers had only been there for it was a very limited time, but I had made it a human only campaign because I wanted like elves and dwarves to be very mysterious. This was going to be their land, and so it would have to entertain that part of the discovery as well. It's not only finding the treasures and old ruins and these interesting landmarks and exploring on a whim of these things. You're going to be meeting new species and interacting with them, and I knew we could use that as role playing opportunities, and that could be some of the adventures that people choose to go on. Um, and so I did, it wasn't just human only. Sorry, I did allow humans, and then I allowed half elves, and I allowed what I was calling troll blooded. It was like fey blooded and troll blooded, and so it was half elf, half orc essentially. And it was for people who really they wanted to have that lineage and they wanted to have a reason for having it, and so we could pull that in. At least players had some choice. I also used an older effective bringing culture into it as what kind of culture did you grow up in, and that is sort of replaced some of these like traditional species or racial options that you see like elves, dwarves, and it's just like you didn't like, oh, I grew up in a mining community, now I have dwarven abilities. It wasn't like that. But I wanted it to be able to bring that in because not everyone is going to start off on the same foot. Not everyone's fleeing an urban environment, so we had like urban, rural, some borderland types, real rugged stuff. People who were playing nobles, I gave them, like a decadent cultural option, and a nomad option, things like that. And so it gave you further ability to draw down and say, okay, well, I'm a human, but I come from a nomadic culture, and I somehow ended up here, which was kind of handy and very cool because you wouldn't have that many horses, and so you have these people who are bringing over, some of their most valuable possessions. Um, Sorry, so it's kind of going off the top, and I made a few notes on it because it was years ago. We had that in place. I knew the world. I had started putting together some rumors, and essentially it was like adventure sites, and not just the geographic locations. And I used a good source for this is Perilous Wilds for Dungeon World. You can that book is really invaluable, especially to a West Marches type campaign if you're going to try to do this. just because it has so many very cool tables and it allows you to really set things up, and it allows you to do very fast on the fly creations of things if there is something suddenly discovered while they're on the campaign trail. So I use that. I do recommend that for any games if you're going to try this. So built the rumors. Like I said, they're eventually, modules. And just I put them out, and what I did was I knew that I had these bands of sort of population control based on actual middle ages. So at 5 miles out, at 10 miles out, at 20 miles out, and it's what the population sustainability would be. And so you'd have the center focus, and then a few miles out, you'd have these outlying farms, and then you'd have some maybe forts, here and there, and then you'd have these really far out outposts, and those are sort of the limits of safe bases. So you can go out and adventure, and then you don't have to come all the way back to the town. You could park it at an outpost, and it still gives a jumping point for other characters to come and meet that character at that location. And you can send messages back and forth because it would be a thing. Um, Also, the setting was a pseudo-Slavic setting. It was kind of fun because most people don't play in pseudo-Slavic settings, and I went ahead and went with that. I thought it'd be pretty cool to do that, and everyone had a good time. And then I built a Discord specifically for it, and within that, you had to do channels, and so I would have like a tavern channel. So the purpose of the tavern channel isn't just so that people can get in there and BS. It was if your character went out and you discovered something or you found out some information, you would bring that back and you could do it in character, or you could just say, hey, here's what we found out in, location X. And that could spark further adventures, and it could spark other people who are in there and reading that and say, oh, now we have new rumors or we have new leads to go on. And there's new things to investigate. So they had the tavern channel, then they had some voice channels. So if people felt so obliged, they could get in there and actually have they could role play or whatever they wanted to do. I just wanted to make sure there was a way of facilitating what they needed to do because um, there was a rumors channel, so I put up all these rumors, and it was here's the rumor, here's the initial source of the rumor, and there was I don't know maybe 10 or 15, maybe 20 of them. I don't really remember how many there were, but those were the leads to go and do the adventures. And uh, once I got that all set up, and the Discord wasn't very complicated, but it was just set up enough, just kind of like that, where you wanted to give the people who are in there are going to want to look at what is possible, what has happened, how these conversations go back and forth. They start making plans, and also there was I like a recruitment channel. So if someone finds something they want to do, they can go into a recruitment channel, hit the at everyone, and say, hey, here's whatever the ranger. I want to lead an expedition and to this location to, or in this direction to go see what's out there. And there were NPCs that you could, be hired by. There was a lot of that going on. There wasn't really a lot of necessity for role play in a West Marches game. Not like normal. I mean, you can, but the point of it isn't for me to sit down the initial adventure and wait for them to come and role play out getting an adventure to go to. It's not really what a West Marches game is about. It really is like, okay, cool, we're all in agreement that everything is boxed up and now we're going to go forward. So after I did that, I put out the call to recruit players, and I want to say I used my company's Discord channel and a couple of Discord channels. Like forgot. Maybe it might have been the unofficial Savage Worlds channel, and just a few other things. Roll 20, which felt dirty because I use Foundry, I don't use Roll 20, but whatever. People want to play, and just Roll 20 happens to have probably a really solid looking for games thing. I want to say the RPG subreddit or the LFG subreddit on Reddit, and probably a couple other places. But the call went out, let everyone know, like, hey, here's the parameters of what I want to do, and it's a West Marches campaign. Just so you know, it's the onus is on the players to schedule this out and to figure out what they want to do for adventure. I won't be pushing it. Most people, I think, made one or two characters. I really only remember most people having one character, but I think I ended up recruiting like 50 or 60 people. It might seem too big, but I don't, maybe somewhere in there. Even if it was half of that, it was still a really good number of folks. Uh, and they were given the parameters of the setting, they were given the setting notes, and then they went and made their characters. And it was, they had them all ready to go. And people would, there was a character introduction channel as well. Um, so it was, that way you'd have like, hey, here's, blah, 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 and be a good list. And then, people would, if they were going to form groups, they could make their own little group channel, which isn't really advised because, like I said, you're going to mix it up a lot. You're never like part of the goal is to never adventure the same people twice. Um, it just is what it is. But you kind of eventually you're gonna probably we're gonna collapse into that mode anyway, just because people get comfortable with one another. But ideally, they're gonna go out and they're gonna actually kibitz and they're gonna to move around and get new folks. So we got the Discord set up, we got all the channels set up, all the characters were done. I had Foundry set up, and I had the Fog of War on the map, and we had these, like overland movements. And it was hexes, and so we knew how far you could move in a day if you were on horseback, which not most people didn't have horses, uh, and we knew where to go. And then, honestly, really left it up to the players. I said, "Here's my schedule of when I can play." Which is, you got to be willing to really, be a little lean on your schedule. And if you can't, you can't. But you're going to want to. Like we got one morning, I think it was 5 or 6 in the morning to run a game for folks who were across the pond, things like that. So it's got to be a little bit of give and take on your end as well as theirs. And I really left it up to them. And they did. People would go and investigate, and they would find the rumors that sounded interesting and put the call out, and it was up to them. I think I said I didn't want any more than 4 or 5, maybe 6, whatever. I just don't like running games for bigger groups. And I gave them those parameters as well, and then they would go into the chat and they would enter the tavern or the sub tavern, or like a team building chat room, whatever it was, and the call would go out. And yeah, they people were recruiting. We actually had adventures lined up, and the hardest part probably is figuring out the scheduling of when they can and can't play. But again, that's really where the onus is on the players. Is the GM, you're not going to be bothered by that. You shouldn't be bothered by that. That's you're you as the GM in a West Marches game, you are embarking on a very arduous, a very rewarding, but very, very arduous style of campaign. There's a lot to keep track of, but with the digital tools, it's not that big of a deal. And everyone's character is in there, and there's ways around it. Depending on what system you use, it can be super easy, super hard. For Savage Worlds, Foundry has a Savage Worlds stat block importer, so you just dump things in there, just straight into it, and it creates the character sheet for you, for wild card or non wild card. So yeah, that was it. And then they would go out and they understood the rules were, it was like, hey, when you go out, your character is unavailable until you are either back at the starting point town, or you're at one of the outposts or forts, and another group can come pick you up. And even then, it's not a guarantee that you're going to be able to get there. But ideally, it's you are not able to, once you're going on out, if you're gone from that base camp where they're setting out from, you are not going to be able to join them. You can't just say, hey, we're going to pick this guy up along the way. Um, because there's no guarantee of that, because you can get lost in the wilderness. You're exploring. Well, that was the other channel I had. I had a map channel, so I was not keeping track of the maps, but they would take screenshots and of the map as they saw it, and so people kept adding to the map, and they would make notes. And so uh, I don't think that ever got cumbersome, but it was pretty neat because you'd have it becomes very cool because the map becomes a living document, and it's everyone's interpretation of what is going on in the world with the map. So you would have their these notes up there, and you would have like Expedition One, Expedition Two, and they were doing their map. And I never really touched it. I knew what the true map was because I could see it. Um, but I let them explore. And I think the biggest enemy was still scheduling, to be honest. It wasn't burnout on my end. Also, I was getting ready to, I picked up another really big project. But it was just scheduling. We had a lot of players. In fact, I think I still have the Ford uh, for it lined up and it's still open. And I probably should have looked before this, but yeah, that's still a thing. It still exists. I think it was called Severnaya, something like that. And that is it. That's how we really ran it. It just kind of just ended, which I think a lot of West Marches games, they just stop. People stop adventuring. This People stop scheduling. It gets really, really wonky like that. But if it's something you want to try, I suggest you try it. It's kind of fun. It sounds like it's not really as much work as maybe this made it out to be, but you're going to want to be. Like I said, it's going to be very interesting. You're going to earn your chops as a GM. Uh, Maybe I'll do a video on the other experiment that I did. Where it was I ran an Iron GM campaign or a Iron GM competition at a local game store when I was living in Maryland. And that was pretty cool, actually. That will teach you what you're made of as a game master if you do one of those. I've been trying to run one for a con for a long time, and there's just not a lot of interest in it. It's most people have never seen it. So yeah, so that is how I did the West Marches. If there's anything you want to know, again, put in the comments. I was surprised to see a lot of the comments asking questions about West Marches and saying, yeah, we'd like to hear about it. Hopefully that helps. Um, if you, I can give a link if you really want to see it. I think the Forge is still open or whatnot, but yeah, regardless, I think the Discord is gone at this point. Uh, but yeah, that's it. West Marches. If you're gonna run one, let me know also. I think it'd be cool. And if you want to run one and you want some tips and tricks, head on over to our Discord and just ask the chat. No issue. I am retired from the military, and so every day is Saturday. See you next time.